Yeah.
Agnes, wala kang sound.
The cushion?
Yeah, just
Yeah,
the color.
Yeah.
Maliwanag masyado.
Oo nga, hindi ko maano.
You're okay. Okay. Your lighting is okay. I know ba?
Sino pa andyan?
So are we going to start now?
Start na po tayo.
Umpisa na tayo.
When
you're ready.
8:12.
We start the first video, right?
The land acknowledgement.
Yes.
Okay.
This land has always
once prominent
been a meeting place, and the stories of this land go back thousands of years.
These stories rest underneath concrete streets that were once prominent pathways and trade routes.
These stories permeate through crevices in the land and flow through ancient waterways.
Back when the shoreline was further north and the trees were standing in water, these stories stood with them.
Takaranto.
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 Tikaranto, where the Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and Anishinaabe peoples gathered, traded, and took care of this dish with one spoon.
A shared land and our shared responsibility.
But what knowledge?
What knowledge?
What knowledge?
What knowledge must be acquired before we can acknowledge?
We meet you here today in search of stories.
What stories will you share for future generations to learn?
Mga kababayan, ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas.
Padre
car ton bras c'est porter l'épée, il sait porter la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée des plus brillants exploits. God keep our land glorious and free. Oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Okay. Magandang gabi po sa inyong lahat na taga-Canada at Amerika. Magandang umaga naman sa ating audience in the Philippines. I'm Agnes Lopez Manasan, your host this evening. The Filipino-Canadian Writers and Journalists Network, or FC-WJNet, is presenting this evening's celebration, ang Gabi ng Sining at Kultura, pagtatanghal, to commemorate the 160th birthday of Supremo God Andres Bonifacio. We will be taking a look at the extraordinary contribution of Supremo Andres Bonifacio sa kasaysayan ng kultura at sining sa paghawa ng landas sa mahabang pakikibaka ng sambayanang Pilipino para sa kanyang kalayaan at kasarinlan. After 300 years of colonialism, we continue to face the current colonial and feudalistic character of Philippine society. Hanggat ngayon ay pinagpatuloy pa rin nating gampanan ang pakikibaka para sa layang minimithi. Upang bigyan tayo ng paliwanag tungkol sa Bonifest, let's call on Hermie Garcia to give us a background about this celebration and to enlighten us about the Filipino-Canadian Writers and Journalists Network. Hermie is the founder and leader of FC-WJNet. He is also the current editor and publisher of the newspaper here in Toronto, The Philippine Reporter. So take it away, Hermie.
Wala kang sound.
Mute ka, Hermie. So unmute yourself, please.
Okay, unmute na. Good evening to everybody. Good evening, good morning, wherever you are in the world. I'm going to speak mostly in English for the benefit of our youth who were born here or in North America or outside the Philippines, or grew up not knowing how to speak Tagalog. So, the Filipino-Canadian Writers and Journalists Network, FC-WJNet, an organization of writers, literary and non-literary writers and journalists, was formed in September 2017, and it was launched in April of 2018. So it's a few years old. The members comprise of published writers, poets, short story writers, novelists, theater and film script writers, academic writers, journalists, reporters, book and anthology and newspaper editors, podcast and blog writers dedicated to their profession and craft. One of our first projects was a series on press freedom. We had speakers from, in different occasions, different dates, speakers from Canada, Tom Henheffer of the Freedom of Expression Network, Manny Mogato from the Philippines, prominent journalist in the Philippines, who spoke about fake news as a threat to journalism. And then from Beijing, China, Eric Baculino, the Beijing bureau chief of the NBC. So we had also sponsored speaking events of Marshall McLuhan fellows from the Philippines who toured Canada in the year that they were awarded the McLuhan Fellowship. We had names like the most recent was Carmina Constantino, 2022 McLuhan Fellow, and then previous to her was Christian Esguerra, 2020, 2021 Fellow of Marshall McLuhan Award. And then we had a few more. I lost track of the names, but anyway, we also had we supported each other. We had some members who had book launches, and we supported them. And one of our major projects is the Bonifest, Bonifacio Festival, supposed to be every year, but we missed 1 year. We started in 2019. Our guest speaker was Patricia Evangelista. Maybe many of you know her name. She launched recently a book I think published in New York about her writings and experiences covering families of victims of extrajudicial killings in the Philippines during the drug war of former President Duterte. And I think her book was one of the 10 bestsellers in New York, and the list of New York Times or New York. But anyway, the second Bonifest was the first one with Patricia as guest speaker was held in City Hall of Toronto, and we had an audience of more than 200 physical people coming to the event, because after that 2020 there was COVID, so we could not hold a physical event, so we held it as a Zoom session. But the second one was 2020, and we had our guest, the eminent historian Milagros Guerrero, who wrote history textbooks for the University of the Philippines. And then she wrote about the Tejeros Convention, and it was discussed like it was a coup d'etat of the leadership of Andres Bonifacio in the Katipunan by the Aguinaldo group of Cavite. And then the third one was Professor Michael Charlton Xiaochua, history educator from Ateneo University in Manila. And then the fourth one is what we're having tonight or today, it's Boni Ilagan. One last thing, we have a very recent project that was initiated a few months ago. First, I'd like to show you a poster that we launched a few years ago. I don't know if you can you see it?
Okay.
It's a poster about Philippine struggle for independence from the Spanish times to 1946, when the Philippines was supposedly granted independence by the United States. And then we are launching 2 more posters in the coming months. The second poster is covers the period from 1946 to 1972, at the end of the presidency of the senior Marcos, before declaring martial law. And then the third poster will cover the period from martial law and then series of presidents after martial law, and then until the present current President Marcos Jr. So, and what we have achieved so far is we have asked the help of experts from the Philippines from 6 different areas of the coverage of the period. One is the military area, military part, and then the political. Military is being the consultant is Dr. Roland Simbulan, an expert on U.S. and Philippine military relations. And the second one is political, covered by Judy Tagiwalo, professor from University of the Philippines, retired, and formerly secretary of Department of Welfare and DWSD, Social Development. And then the third area is education, covered by Dr. Francis Geologo. I think he's the chairman of the history department of the Ateneo de Manila University. And media is covered by Raymond Villanueva, a veteran journalist from the Philippines. And then the last one covers the topic of culture and the arts. It is covered by our speaker tonight, Bonifacio Ilagan. So this is the last, I mean, so far the projects of the FC-WJNet, and I think we'll have a video about the objectives of the FC-WJNet, which we will play right now. So thank you very much.
The objectives of the Filipino-Canadian Writers and Journalists Network are to raise the standard and quality of writing among writers, creative and otherwise, and journalists in the community.
To build a network of writers and journalists who help one another advance the practice of their professions.
To serve the community and larger society by writing about important issues of the day that affect a significant sector and their long-term interests.
To reach out to other writers and journalist groups and forge solidarity on common issues.
To support and promote human rights, freedom of expression, freedom of the press, and democratic ideals in the spirit of social justice.
To advance the cause of all writers and journalists against all forms of discrimination and exclusion.
To promote the growth, development, and dissemination of Filipino writings as significant contributions to Canadian and Filipino literature.
The highlights of activities of the Filipino-Canadian Writers and Journalists Network in the 3 years since it was established are the following. As a group, we've held a series of forums on the state of journalism and press freedom in the Philippines, Canada, and China. We've hosted presentations of 3 Marshall McLuhan Fellows in cooperation with the Canadian Embassy of the Philippines. Discussions included the critical state of media and human rights situation in the Philippines.
We have published a historical poster on the struggle for Philippine independence with an online link to resources.
We have issued statements and participated in campaigns to oppose assaults on press freedom, such as the closure of ABS-CBN and the killing of journalists and human rights defenders.
Bonifest 2019 was held in the City of Toronto's Council Chambers and Members Lounge. We celebrated with songs, dance, spoken word, the launch of our historical poster, an art exhibit, book displays, readings by Filipino Canadian authors, a keynote speech by 2019 Marshall McLuhan Fellow Patricia Evangelista, and a debut of The First Cry, an original play by our members Leon Orias and Louis Canyon.
Kasamang Rizal, Gabriela Melchora at mga bayaning walang pangalan. Bonifacio, ang ating kasaysayan, nagbuwis ng buhay para sa paglaya ng bayan.
Ang tunay na bayani, hindi paggagapi, bayay ipagtatanggol sa pangaalipin, pangaapi, tataas ang bandila ng ating kalayaang mithi, magbubuklod upang tiyaking pangarap ay makakamit.
Thank you very much, Hermie, and more power to the Filipino-Canadian Writers and Journalists Network. They've accomplished so much since they were established in 2018. And I'm very proud, actually, that my daughter is a member of the organization. Anyway, in this program, we'd like to remember the important role ng kultura at sining sa mithiing paglaya at kasarinlan ng bayang Pilipinas. Let us listen to Aling Pag-ibig Pa, sa lyrics ni Itla Caba hango sa tulang Pag-ibig sa Tinubuang Lupa ni Andres Bonifacio at isinalin sa musika ni Ding Atchacoso. Ito ay awitin ng People's Chorale.
Aling pag-ibig pa ang hihigit kaya sa pag-ibig ko sa'yo, bayan ko. Sa hirap at ginhawa, sa higaya't dalita, ako'y kasama mo.
Sa bukid bayan ko, kung tigang ang lupa at di ka makaluha, ako ang magdidilig. Kung nalaglag ay malimuya, ikagawa kita ng pintas bayan ko. Sa pag-ibig ko sa'yo, bayan ko, sa hirap at ginhawa, sa ligaya at galita, ako'y kasama mo. Kung ang gintong palay ay kumakaway, katabi mo ako sa bukid bayan ko. Ang magdidilig kung ang ulan na
Paano nga ba sinuyo ng pag-ibig si Oryang bilang kasintahan ni Andres at ang pagmamahal sa bayan? Panoorin natin ang isang maiksing pelikula sa panulat at direksyon ni Bonifacio Ilagan na pinamagatang Suyuan Himagsikan. Let's listen to the explanation about the poem Pag-ibig sa Tinubuang Lupa at ang ugnay nito sa buhay at pagkilos ni Supremo Andres Bonifacio sa isang masuyang paglalahad sa giliw niyang si Oryang. Ito itatanghal sa atin ng Tag-Ani Performing Arts Society. Panoorin po natin.
Hi!
Kamusta po?
Kilala naman natin si Andres Bonifacio, di ba?
Siyempre naman, dapat.
Si Gregoria de Jesus, si Oryang.
Bukod sa love team sila, importante din ang role nila sa history.
Ayun, history. Importante ito. Lalo na ngayon na nagiging napakaseryosong problema ng negative historical revisionism.
Ay, ano ba naman kasi nangyayari sa Philippine history subject natin, ano? Well, anyway, Irving, ito na lang. Bakit nga ba importante ang history?
Quote ko na lang si George Santayana. Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it.
Sabi naman ng mga matatanda, ang hindi lumingon sa pinanggalingan, hindi makakarating sa paroroonan.
Ngayon, merong nananawagan tungkol sa pagkakaisa at pag-unlad. Pero, paano ito magiging totoo
kung ang kasaysayan natin ay binabarubal?
Binabarubal?
Sinasalaula. Pag-ibig sa tinubuang lupa. Aling pag-ibig pa ang hihigit kaya sa pagkadalisay at pagkadakila gaya ng pag-ibig sa tinubuang lupa? Aling pag-ibig pa? Wala na nga. Wala.
Anong masasabi mo?
Kasi simula ko pa lamang. Iniintindi ko pa at malalim. At kung ilang pahina.
Kung nahahabaan ka, nangunguhulugan
Wala
ka.
akong sinasabing ganyan, tao ka.
Nakailang borador ako, tapos...
Aling pag-ibig pa ang hihigit kaya sa pagkadalisay at pagkadakila.
Ayan. Tapos na po, Ginoong Andres.
Nakailang borador ako, ngunit meron pa rin kapintasan.
Hindi ko alam na ikaw pala si Perfecto. At ano pa yung babaguhin dito?
Ang ibig sabihin, pasado sa'yo? Oryang? Sana'y hindi lamang ang tula ko ang pasado, sana'y ako rin. Mismo.
Hoy! Huwag kang ang pangahas. Paano kung may makita sa atin?
Wala ka bang itatanong?
Saan?
Tungkol sa aking tula. Tungkol yan sa bayan.
Alam ko, palagay mo sa akin.
Wika mo kasi kanina'y malalim.
May kubling kahulugan. Kakaiba.
Wala na nga, wala.
Marahil nga'y kakaiba. Dahil kami hindi pa karamihan sa ngayon, subalit darating ang araw kapag kami, tayo, ang siya nang nakararami, ang mga kaaway naman ang tatanghaling kakaiba.
Mga kaaway? Andres, may mga kaaway ka?
Meron.
Sino? Bakit?
Kaaway mo din sila.
Ha? Paano naman akong nadamay diyan?
Wala bang naibubulong sa'yo, Senadoro at Islaw?
Andres, kung sa bulong ay marami, hindi magiging bubuyog ang bubuyog kung hindi bubulong.
Tungkol sa aming pinagkakaabalahan.
Malay ko.
Hindi mo inusisa?
Bakit ko naman pakikialaman? Lubha pa kung lihim. Lihim baga?
Oo. Gaya nitong paglilihim mo. Hanggang ngayon, kung may puwang ba ako sa puso mo.
Abay, Andres, kung hindi ka makapaghintay at sukat ay itigil na natin ito.
Makapaghihintay.
Buti naman.
Makapaghihintay.
Andres, nais kitang higit pang kilalanin. Ang iyong ugali, halimbawa.
Naipagtapat ko na sa'yo na... Naipagtapat ko na sa'yo na ako'y isang biyudo. Si Monica ay yumao ilang taon na ang nakaraan.
Batid ko na yan. Sukat bang ulitin?
Mahirap lamang kami. Hamak lamang ang hanap buhay naming magkakapatid. Ako'y namamasukan bilang
Ano
isang...
ka ba? Nasabi mo na rin ang mga yan sa akin, Andres.
Kung ganun, ano pa ang nais mong malaman?
Ang iyong ugali nga. Hindi kung masalapi ka ba o dukha.
Ugali.
Halimbawa, nangako ka, linggo, paroroon ka sa amin, hindi ba? Naghintay ako, hindi ka dumating.
Ha? Hindi ba nasabi sa'yo ng pinsan mong si Doro na meron kaming pulong?
Pulong ka dyan, hindi.
Makikita ng Dorong yang sa akin.
Usigin ba naman si Doro ay hindi naman si Doro ang may sala. Ay, suklam talaga ako sa mga taong hindi tumutupad sa pangako.
Patawarin sana ako. Sa malaot madali, maipauunawa ko rin sa'yo. Ng buong buo.
Nais patawarin. Ngunit hindi nagpapaliwanag. Pagkagaling mo nga naman.
Sa ngayon, ipagkaloob sana ang iyong unawa.
At kung hindi ko ipagkaloob,
kung ang bayang ito'y nasasapanganib at siya ay dapat ipatangkilik, ang anak, asawa, magulang, kapatid, isang tawag niya lang ay tatalikdang tilik.
ay, aba, Ginoong Maria, tumula pa. Sabihin na kasi, ano ba yung pinagkakabalahan mo? Ninyo.
Isang kilusan. Natatandaan mo ba yung sinabi ko sa'yo noon?
Masoneria?
Ngayon higit pa sa masoneriya.
Hintay ka, miyembro ka ba ng masoneria?
Hindi na yun gasinong mahalaga.
Sagutin mo lamang. Andres, mason ka ba?
At kung oo,
Kung gayoy, tumpak nga ang hinala ng aking mga magulang.
maling-mali. Pakiisipin lamang ito. Ang masoneriya ay isang lihim na asosasyon ng mga lalaking may pag-irog sa mga karapatang likas at makataong pamumuhay.
Totoo?
Yan ang totoong totoo.
Ngunit Andres, iba ang sinasabi ng mga praile.
Maniwala ka sa mga praile.
Nalilito na ako.
Maghanay ka ng mga dakila at mabubuting lalaki sa buong mundo. Malamang kaysa hindi, mason sila.
Lalaki lamang? Paano naman ang mga dakila at mabubuting babae?
Panlalaki lamang ang masoneriya.
Iyan ang masama, hindi yan pa pwede. Magpupundar ako ng pambabae.
Tututo lang iyong mga magulang. Mag-uulol sa galit yung mga praile. Ika'y uusigi ng bala na.
Ililihim ko sa kanila.
Tulad ng paglilihim mong natatagpo kita.
Parang ganun na nga.
Hindi ka naasiwang kailangan nating maglihim.
Andres, may mga pagkakataong kailangan.
100%. Sang-ayon ako dyan.
Ang buong pag-ibig.
Ngunit ngayon, sabihin mo sa akin, ano nga ulit ang yung nabanggit na pinagkakaabalahang kilusan?
Maanong sabihin muna kung may pag-asa ba ako sa iyo?
Siya na! May pag-asa kung sa may pag-asa.
Oh, langit! Anong tamis! Walang bawian, ha?
Uy, sabi!
Diyos mabagin, Oryang! May isang taon na akong nanunuyo sa'yo, Oryang naman!
Hari na ba walang nakakita sa iyong katampalasanan?
Masaksihan na nila kung masaksihan. Handa naman kitang pakasalan kahit saang simbahan.
Paparating ang ina ko, ang ama ko.
Hala, mainam na ngang masumpungan nila.
Andres, ano ba? Kita'y pinagtitinginan ng madla.
Alin muna sa dalawa? Iniibig mo ko o iniibig mo ko?
Kahiyahiya ito. Tunay nga itong kahiyahiya. Oo, iniibig kita. Sige na, magtigil ka lamang.
Kasintahan na kita.
Oo na nga.
Ay! Tagumpay. Mainam na senyalis ito. Magtatagumpay. Ang himagsikan.
Himagsikan?
Kayong nalagasan ng bunga at bulaklak, kahoy niya ring buhay na nilantat sukat ng balabalakid, makapal na hirap, muling manariwat, sa bayay lumiyag, baka handog-handog ang buong pag-ibig, hanggang sa may dugong ubusing itigis, kung sa pagtatanggol buhay ang kabalik. Ito'y kapalaran at tunay na langit. Aling pag-ibig pa ang hihigit kaya sa pagkadalisay at pagkadakila, gaya ng pag-ibig sa tinumuang lupa. Aling pag-ibig pa, wala na nga, wala, gaya ng pag-ibig sa tinumuang lupa. Aling pag-ibig pa, wala na nga, wala.
Ang galing. Congratulations ka, Bonnie. Ang ganda ng film. It made Andres and Oriang very relatable to most of us, to me at least. So, we'll continue sa programa natin. Sa bahaging ito ng ating programa, malugod nating tinatawag si Mila Garcia, Managing Editor ng Philippine Reporter at isa sa tagapagtaguyod at kasapi ng Filipino-Canadian Writers and Journalists Network, to introduce the keynote speaker of Bonifest 2023. Take it away, Mila.
Thank you, Agnes. For almost 5 decades now, Bonifacio P. Ilagan has been working on and off in the alternative and traditional mass media, including television and video film, apart from the theater where it all started. He has been recognized in all these media platforms, as attested to by his body of works and awards, from the Palanga Memorial Awards for Literature, Cultural Center of the Philippines, Catholic Mass Media Awards, Film Academy of the Philippines, Philippine Movie Press Club Star Awards, Gawad Tanglao, Golden Screen Awards, and the Filipino Academy of Movie Arts and Sciences. In 1999, he was among the 100 awardees of the CCP Centennial Honors for the Arts, chosen from among the most outstanding Filipino artists and cultural advocates in the last 100 years for their contribution to the development of the nation through cultural program and the arts. In 2010, he was conferred the Lifetime Achievement Award, or Gawad Balagtas, by the Writers Union of the Philippines. While taking up political science in the College of Arts and Sciences in UP Diliman, our speaker decided to leave the campus to join the fledgling underground resistance movement against the brewing Marcos dictatorship shortly before the suspension of the privilege of habeas corpus in 1971. 2 years into the martial law dictatorship, he was captured in 1974 together with the journalist poet Jose F. Lacaba and the UP English professor Dolores Stephens Feria. He was tortured. Released on temporary liberty, he went back to UP Diliman and took up Philippine studies. He became active again in the people's movement. When the military learned of his activities, he rejoined the underground, but was rearrested and tortured in 1994. Among the important works on television under the pen name Patrick Manahan were the pioneering and award-winning series Alab ng Lahi and Bisperas ng Kasaysayan. Two of his plays, Pagsambang Bayan and Welga Welga, have been cited in the Encyclopedia of Philippine Art of the Cultural Center of the Philippines as major works in Philippine theater. He wrote screenplays starting in the late 80s, including The Flor Contemplacion Story with Ricky Lee, 1994, followed by Dukot in 2009, Sigwa in 2010, Deadline in 2011, and Migrante in 2012. These films, all directed by Joel Lamangan, are noted social realist films on the human rights, justice and freedom, and social reformation. Our speaker is the recipient of the 2019 Gawad Plaridel Award, given by the University of the Philippines College of Mass Communication to outstanding media practitioners. Named after the great Marcelo H. Del Pilar, Gawad Plaridel bestows honor on Filipino media practitioners who have excelled in any of the media and performed with the highest level of professional integrity in the interest of public service. Our speaker is a co-convener of the campaign against the return of the Marcoses and martial law, spokesperson of Samahan ng Ex-Detainees laban sa detention at aresto, and chair emeritus of Surian ng Sining. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor and privilege to present to you Bonifacio P. Ilagan.
Maraming salamat, Mila, sa iyong introduksyon. Maraming salamat sa inyo sa pag-iimbita sa akin. Magandang araw at magandang gabi sa ating lahat. Nobody is asking, but I am telling. I was born on the same day that Andres Bonifacio, after whom this festival is called, was born 160 years ago. As we all know, he was the guy who launched the People's War against Spanish colonialism by founding the Kataas-Taasan, Kagalang-galangang Katipunan ng Mga Anak ng Bayan, highest and most venerable association of the children of the country, Katipunan or KKK for short. There's another personal trivia I'd like to share with you. A younger sister of mine was born on the same day that the novelist and martyr Jose Rizal was born in 1861, rather. Thus, her name, Rizalina. If I did survive martial law, she did not. In 1977, the 5th year of the Marcos dictatorship, she was abducted by state security agents with 9 other activists and has remained a desaparecida since then. In the 1970s, my sister and I were cultural activists engaged in the movement for people's art. He helped organize a chapter of the theater group Panday Sining, Artsmith in Southern Tagalog. I was the founding chair of Panday Sining. Now, I have a question. Had Andres Bonifacio not been too preoccupied with the organizational issues of the underground movement that he started in 1892, and which eventually ended the 333 years of Spanish colonialism in the Philippines, could he have written more poems or pursued a theater career? It is little known that he once belonged to a theater group called Teatro Porvenir and acted in at least one play about the mythical Filipino hero named Bernardo Carpio. He also wrote the Pag-ibig sa Tinubuang Lupa, Love for the Native Land, a poem that has inspired composers and now considered an anthem by freedom-loving Filipinos. Well, I am glad that this year's edition of Bonifest is taking up culture and the arts, which has been an integral part of the continuing struggle for Philippine independence. Precisely owing to that struggle by Filipino freedom fighters, many of whom were artists like Andres Bonifacio, my generation inherited a tradition of resistance against foreign domination. That resistance had to be quelled, something that the new colonial masters who took over the Spaniards absolutely knew. They also knew that armed force was never going to get the job of colonialism completed. They had to subjugate the minds and hearts of Filipinos as well. That is a question of culture. They needed to ensure that generation upon generation of their colonial subjects would be nurtured after their image. Losing no time, the U.S. invasionary troops in 1898 had to become the first teachers who taught Filipino children how to read and write in American. By the time that I entered grade school in the 1950s, American was no longer a strange language to me. By grade 5, our curriculum included a course in U.S. history and geography. Humility aside, I was tops in reciting from memory the names of the presidents as well as all the states and capital of the Almighty Union. Not to forget, we sang the Star-Spangled Banner by heart, and also with for burning. So, what was wrong with that? What was wrong about living the American dream that was the land of milk and honey? Now, if we could not be U.S. citizens, then we must at least acquire the stateside appliances and consumer goods that became the standard of the good life in a country whose people sang with misplaced nostalgia about White Christmas when they only had the dry and wet seasons, but felt satisfied that snow covered their Christmas trees thanks to the illusion lent by medical cotton. Alam niyo yon, yung Christmas tree na binabalutan ng bulak. Inabutan ko yan, at least sa probinsya namin. Here's another personal trivia. if you may indulge me. When my father reached 60, my whole family started receiving a pension from the US in our individual names because my father had lived in America for some 30 years. How generous Uncle Sam could be. Kasi ang tatay ko, sa aking palagay, ay isa sa mga unang OFWs. Teenager siya when he, tawag dito, nag-stowaway siya sa isang barko. Anyway, that's another story. Entering the University of the Philippines in Diliman in 1969 and taking up a subject in Philippine history, I had to unlearn a lot of my childhood education and sentiments about the history of our country and Uncle Sam. I felt pain in the stories of the brutality and massacres that the US perpetrated to conquer our people and take away the independence that had been won by Filipinos in 1898 at the cost of much life and blood. I began to understand why, in the aftermath of World War II and the grant, I put grant in quotes, the grant of independence on July 4, 1946, the US promptly launched the Fulbright program, a so-called educational and cultural exchange program, patterned after the old PEDO system of the early years of the colonial regime. It aimed to maintain the Americanization of the Filipino intellectual in the context of the reformatted milieu of colonial apprenticeship for nation building. Again, nation building in quotes. Over the years, notable artists, every notable artist, writer, musician, critic, or academician was awarded a grant or scholarship in the US to experience firsthand and to attest to the bounty of living in America and the ideal of the American way of life. In culture and the arts, stateside became the bar of excellence. In popular music, for instance, the Philippines had to have its own Elvis Presley's and Paul Anka's and Frank Sinatra's, all widely adored American singers at the time. Filipinos exerted their best to sound like the real McCoy. Short story writers strove to become the Andersons or the Saroyans or the Hemingways of Philippine letters by imitating their style. The craft and style of these popular American nationals. It became so pervasive in the mindset of the Filipino psyche that a label had to be coined for it. And the label is colonial mentality. Quite apart from its intention, however, the colonial apprenticeship of Filipino intellectuals strayed in another direction when artists and writers began to challenge traditional literary norms, explore new forms, and take up serious themes on cultural identity and nationhood. An offshoot of this phenomenon was the blossoming of creative writing in the native languages, such as Tagalog, Iloco, Hiligaynon, and Sugbuanon. The more daring literary outputs written in these languages went further to defy the safety of academic and philosophical inquiries and harked back to the patriotic ideals of the 1896 revolution. Now we go to 1961. Baka pwede nating iurong yung visuals, ano? 1961. That's it. 1961. By 1961, a young professor by the name of Jose Maria Sison organized the Student Cultural Association of the University of the Philippines, and in 1964, the Militant Kabataang Makabayan, Patriotic Youth or KM, right on the 101st birth anniversary of Andres Bonifacio. Joma Sison extolled the revolutionary virtues of the proletarian hero and underscored the need to finish the unfinished revolution of 1896 by upholding the people's anti-colonial and anti-imperialist struggle to achieve genuine freedom and democracy. By this time, artists, especially the writers in the native languages, had started to gravitate to the KM brand of activism by debunking the so-called new criticism theory and the school of art for art's sake. They created works of art that laid bare American neo-colonial control over the Philippines and the elitist rule of the native aristocracy over the masses, particularly the youth. Progressive artists were drawn into the powerful stream of the nascent mass movement for national freedom and democracy. In 1966, let's go to 1966. 66. That's it. In 1966, amid grinding poverty, First Lady Imelda Romualdez Marcos founded the Cultural Center of the Philippines, or CCP, to showcase, and then in quotes again, the true, the good, and the beautiful in Philippine society. Alam niyo, ito yung naging mantra ni Imelda, di ba? The true, the good, and the beautiful. However, it's essentially, it concealed to the reality of the impoverished and dismal existence of the masses. But no matter, the CCP hosted foreign artists to prove that the Philippines had finally arrived on the world stage and was now in the league with world-class artistic icons. In 1970, the first, in 1970, okay, let's go back to 1967, PETA. That's it. So Imelda founded in 1966 the Cultural Center of the Philippines. The next year, the Philippine Educational Theater Association, or PETA, was founded by Cecil Guidote Alvarez. Alam niyo, hindi naman siguro sinasadya, but it sort of started to contradict the elitist notion of government tungkol sa culture and the arts. Kasi ang PETA ay hindi sponsored ng gobyerno at talagang nagsimula sa community. Community theater ang nais na itaguyod ng PETA. Ang PETA would make a history by itself even after Cecil Guidote had to escape from the Philippines after the declaration of martial law kasi na-wanted siya, pati yung kanyang, hindi ko alam kung kasal na sila ni Gerson Alvarez. PETA continued with another brand of activists that had imbibed the consciousness of the first quarter storm. Anyway, so 1970 na tayo. In 1970, the first quarter storm or FQS broke out, spearheaded by KM. Of course, nandiyan na ang SDK, ang Samahang Demokratiko ng Kabataan, at marami pang ibang organisasyon. The FQS rocked the very foundation of the moribund Philippine society. Also described as the second propaganda movement summoning artists and writers, it was a people's crusade that materialized in a series of unprecedented protest actions animated by a generation of youthful activists who were fired up with a newfound sense of nationalism and democracy. It exposed lingering social and political maladies and articulated age-old despair and aspirations of the inarticulate, which became an avalanche of dissent and an agenda for revolutionary change. The FQ has played a major role in altering the consciousness of the people regarding the Philippine colonial past and the roots of the people's basic problems, and how this had overwhelmed social structures, governance, the economy, justice system, foreign relations, peace and order, and of course, culture and the arts. Activist artists challenged one another to get down their ivory tower. Ang sabi namin noon, bumaba sa toring-garing. Get down their ivory tower and be one with the people in their life and death struggle against oppression and exploitation and for national independence and democracy. They organized themselves into associations engaged in theater, the visual arts, literature, and cultural research. So nandyan na yung Panday Sining, of course, ang Gintong Silahis. Nauna na ang Samahang Kamanyang nga pala. Ayan, Sining Bayan. Ang Panday Sining, Tanghalang Bayan, Gintong Silahis, theater. Ang Sining Bayan at ang nagkakaisang progresibong artista, arkitekto, visual arts. Ang panulat para sa kaunlaran ng sambayanan ay literature at ang Humanist League of the Philippines ay cultural research. Ito little known tong Humanist League of the Philippines eh. Ang mga leader nito, hindi to alam ng marami, sila Eta Rosales nung panahon na yon. Anyway, these were all mass-based cultural organizations espousing people's art as contraposed to the government-sponsored elitist art, a feverish organizing and mobilization of people's artists and cultural workers, and the blossoming of public art swept across the land. Kaya lang, but it would be short-lived. With full knowledge, sige, I'll annotate this. First half ng 1972, kasi second half ang martial law, di ba? So we had marami ng mga cultural organizations. First half of 1972, we dared convene a council which we called Konsehong Tagapag-ugnay ng Revolutionaryong Sining or CONTRES, Coordinating Council for People's Culture. This is our first attempt to do networking. Kasi we realized marami ng cultural organizations, hindi lang sa Greater Manila area, yun ang tawag nun sa Metro Manila, kundi sa marami pang regions. Ay nako, napakasipag ng Panday Sining, ng Gintong Silahis to do organizing in the regions. So we formed Konsehong Tagapag-ugnay ng Revolutionaryong Sining, first half of 1972. But it would be short-lived. With full knowledge and concurrence of Washington, Ferdinand Marcos Sr. imposed martial law in the Philippines in September 1972. Countless people's artists and writers joined the underground resistance movement against the dictatorship. They helped form a clandestine but formidable anti-dictatorship network of media and cultural workers to counter the fascist propaganda of the US-backed Marcos dictatorship. In the grip of white terror unleashed by the Marcos dictatorship, so we joined, artists and writers joined the underground. Among the publications that we published were yung Dare to Struggle, Dare to Win, Ulos, and People's Courier. We also helped in, in the circulation of liberation and taliban ng bayan. Anyway, in the grip of white terror unleashed by the Marcos dictatorship, writers learned to outwit the censors of martial law by creating what would be called literature of resistance and literature of circumvention. Theater artists employed traditional forms such as religious drama, the religious drama cenaculo, to articulate the issues of the day and raise veiled commentaries about the martial law situation. They produced historical plays laden with subtext about the present. In later years, they would perform plays on national freedom and sovereignty and even nuclear disarmament. Martial law notwithstanding, political theater became a major genre in what was to become one of the liveliest periods in Philippine literary and theater history. By the 1980s, during this time too, PETA recognized that it was their golden years. Kasi that was the time when they were challenged really to circumvent the censorship of the Marcos martial law dictatorship. By the 1980s, much of the greed and corruption of the Marcos regime had been revealed and the white terror of martial law dissipated. Kaya lang, the people, including artists, had to endure torture and prison and make the supreme sacrifice. Then it was 1986. For 4 days in February, Filipinos gathered in their millions to finally oust the dictator and put an end to the 21-year despotic rule, 14 of which were under martial law. From the presidential palace, the U.S. Air Force airlifted the Marcoses and their cronies to Clark Air Base in Pampanga, one of the biggest military bases of the U.S. outside continental America, on their way to Hawaii to flee the people's wrath. It was called the EDSA Revolution, but it was not. It was a people's uprising, all right, and it must be credited for ousting a dictator. It was not, however, a revolution because it did not change the power relations of elite rule over the masses, did not change the political and socio-economic structures that had kept the people in bondage through time. What changed, ang nagbago lamang, were the faces in the exclusive elite club of governance. The EDSA uprising facilitated the revival of the so-called liberal democracy that was bestowed by the U.S. to its neo-colony way back in 1946. So, in a manner of speaking, we were back from where we started. This is not to belittle EDSA, pero ganun talaga eh, no matter how you look at it. People ask every so often, so anong nangyari sa EDSA? Baliwala ba ito? Hindi. Pero ito yung explanation, I think. Nevertheless, upon the installation of the Cory Aquino government, activists, artists, and writers went full blast in organizing their ranks and propagating people's art. So nagkaroon ng, tuwa kami noon, tayo noon, di ba? Nagkaroon ng democratic space. And we reveled in the space that had been given to us after martial law. Kaya lang, the democratic space that had been created by EDSA 1986 eventually constricted. Nasakal. Anyway, constricted amid the political turmoil and natural calamities. Ganun pa man, artists continued to create and propagate the people's struggles in their works. Natatandaan ko noon, Cory ultimately unsheathed the sword of war, sabi niya ganun eh. At tinawag niya ang military na my soldiers. Even as everybody knew that the soldiers, the AFP, had not been reoriented to merit yung sinabi ni General Ramos na we already had a new armed forces of the Philippines. Anyway, that's again another story. In 2016, Ferdinand Marcos Jr. launched the family's campaign for a final grab at executive power by running for the vice presidency. It sparked a renewed discourse on martial law and its implications. Kung meron mang mabuting lumabas doon sa pangangampanya ni Marcos Jr. bilang Vice Presidente, it was that. Naging diskurso ulit ang martial law. And artists took it up in their works. The triumph of Leni Robredo, however, thwarted the Marcos plan. Rodrigo Duterte won as president and declared his so-called war on drugs the centerpiece of his administration. The bloody campaign became a theme in the artists' creations and performances and thus made themselves targets. Gaya ng mga di umano'y drug addicts, you know, of the red tagging vilification of the National Task Force to end local communist armed conflict. The artists also joined in the campaign to assert Philippine sovereignty in the territorial dispute with China over the West Philippine Sea. Then it was 2022. Ferdinand Marcos Jr., by the trickery of a well-oiled machinery of historical distortion, fake news, and an army of trolls, garnered more than 31 million votes. If we are to believe Smartmatic and the Commission on Elections, to become the 17th president of the Philippines. Promptly, his camp proceeded to dig up the landmark projects of the late dictator's regime, reviving the culture of fascist populism and neoliberalism, and once again compromising whatever little sovereignty and independence the Philippines still possessed. There too was a spree of filmic productions aimed to pursue the rehabilitation of the Marcoses, now bearing the imprimatur of officialdom. In the passage of time, people's artists have remained steadfast in the womb of the mass movement for national independence and democracy, and have faithfully carried on the struggle in their genres of expertise. Through time and challenges, big and small, they take them up. We take them up. No doubt, they will persist. We will persist in the continuing struggle to make Philippine independence a reality by uniting the people, heart, and mind through our art. Maraming salamat po sa pakikinig. Thank you.
Maraming salamat ka, Bonnie. You really brought us back to the history of the Philippines very, very well. It's very informative, very clear, very comprehensive, and brought back so many memories, I believe, to many of us who are here right now, who have lived through the period in time in the history of the Philippines when we struggled, you know, in the beginning and the first quarter storm era, and the chronology that you have presented to us about the evolution and the development of the people's struggle, and about the development of the arts and culture in the Philippines. Many of us, I would imagine, lived through the time and have experienced being part of that group. So thank you very much for a very wonderful presentation.
Maraming salamat. Thank you. Thank you sa lahat ng nagpasalamat sa chat.
Magaling, magaling. Salamat. Sa ngayon naman, magkaroon tayo ng a little bit of a break. Bago mawala ang ating mga participants, we'd like all of you to open your video para makakuha tayo ng picture or i-document natin kung sino man ang pwedeng mag-print screen ng mga participants. So siguro, Michael, we can put this in gallery view para we can see who are here right now joining us in this program.
Yeah. For
Okay.
the photo.
Okay lang mo sana sa inyo na makuhanan kayo ng picture, ano po? So you can open your video and we'll put it in gallery view. Okay na ba?
Gallery?
Gallery view. Michael yata.
Michael?
I can take it.
Yeah, Michael can do it.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to take 2 photos because it's split over to
I think we're still in speaker view, right?
yeah. Oh. No, I'm in gallery view so I can see everybody. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Okay, I'm gonna take one more of the remaining group. 3, 2, 1. Very good. I have them. You can. Are we taking a break?
Thank you very much. Thank you, Michael. Thank you so much, everybody. So ngayon ay pupunta na tayo sa ating Q&A. And maaari po bang maaari kayo magbigay ng katanungan o maghingi ng paglilinaw sa presentasyon ni Boni Ilagan. So we'd like to request you to please type your questions in the chat box, or if you would like to raise your hands and unmute yourself para makapagsalita kayo. We have also received, I believe, questions from some of you beforehand. I don't know who has these questions. So, okay. Nauna kong nakita si Bobby Dixon.
Ay, good evening. Good evening. Magandang gabi, magandang umaga. Bonnie, fantastic presentation. No?
Thank you.
Gusto ko lang banggitin yung pagkakamali. Sa tingin ko, no? I mean, I probably am not as deeply involved as many others are. Pero kung hindi pinayagan ni Cory bumalik ang pamilya Marcos, iba siguro ang takbo ng kwan eh. I mean, I personally feel, yun ang isa sa pinakamalaking pagkakamali ni Cory. Payagan, bumalik ang pamilya Marcos at hindi arestuhin sa airport. Bakit pinayagan pumunta sa North at hinayaang magtayo ng sariling bansa doon? That's my comment. And I feel really that's, sa tingin ko, malaking pagkakamali yun. And I actually lost a lot of respect. No? Dahil things would have been very different kung hindi pinayagan bumalik ang pamilya Marcos. Any comment from Bonnie and the others, please?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that started the series of mga pagkakamali. Kasi unti-unti nagluwag eh. Alam nyo ang mga Marcos kapag nakakita ng butas, papasukin at papasukin hanggang paisa-isa nakabalik sila hanggang lahat sila nakabalik. Of course, mas unang pagkakamali ay pinayagang makatakas ang mga Marcos. We were already marching to Malacanang. Na-shift na yung action from EDSA to Malacanang. Kaya lang, even before we were able to do that, meron na palang negotiations. But I think, I don't know, hindi naman ako privy doon sa nangyari sa labas ng barikada, ano? Pero palagay ko, meron pa rin dapat na nagawa upang mapigilan ang mga Marcos na ma-airlift ng mga Amerikano. That was it. Kasi in other countries na may ganung people's uprising, dictators stood up against the wall and shot.
Yeah, that happened to Ceausescu in Romania.
Alam nyo, sa Pilipinas, we were so napakabait, ayun, pinayagan, at ayun, pinayagan pa rin unti-unti ngang makabalik. So, in a way, tama ang sinabi mo na lahat ng yon pagluluwag sa mga Marcos. Not realizing na iba ang greed nitong mga ito eh. Kasi, remember, hindi pa sila nakaka-settle down sa Hawaii, nag-attempt na kaagad si Marcos Jr. na magplano ng mutiny ng coup. Hindi ba? Pinagbawalan nga siya ng US eh. Oo, don't do that, sabi nila. Kung hindi, delikado ka sa amin. Anyway, thank you, thank you. Thank you, Bobby.
Maraming salamat, Bobby and Bonnie. Sunod naman ay si Luis Alexander Umali. Naka-mute
Video.
ka, Luis.
Video.
I-unmute
Audio.
mo sarili mo.
Audio.
Unmute, yeah. We cannot hear you, Luis. So, Mikael, can you unmute him? Okay, unmute him. Sandali lang, Luis.
I'm trying.
You're trying. Luis, can you unmute yourself? I think you can do that.
Alex.
Yeah.
Okay, good. We can hear you now.
Niyo po ako?
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah. Buenos días a todos, a los canadienses filipinos. Conmemoramos el natalicio del gran dirigente de la Revolución Filipina, no, Andres Bonifacio. Well, anyway, my mother was a Spanish professor, and hindi ko siya makalimutan ng sinabi niya, maraming isinulat ang ating mga intelektual na Pilipino sa Espanyol na parang ito ang punak po sa first quarter storm. Tinapon natin yung tinatawag na Spanish heritage. Parang black and white tayo eh. Anything Spanish is colonial. Nakita ko na may mga tula pala ang mga Spanish writers natin gaya ni Jesus Balmori at saka ni Manuel Bernabe tungkol kay Andres Bonifacio na napakaganda. Sinikap ko pong isalin sa Tagalog at ibinigay ko kay Ricky Esguerra yung pagsasalin. At marami pang iba, gaya nung Kanyas by Barfori from Laguna, tungkol to sa kawayan. Kawayan siya pero nakaugnay to sa himagsikan nila Bonifacio na kinakayas mo yung kawayan para sa himagsikan. Yun lang po.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? Would you like to respond, Bonnie?
Yeah. Well, inabutan ko yan, Alex. Magandang umaga nga pala, Alex. Natutuwa ko nandito ka. I was a freshman student when I became part of the campaign to rid the university of all colonial vestiges, 1969. And one of the colonial vestiges was the obligatory 12 units of Spanish. So I had an antipathy laban dyan sa Spanish 12 courses. Ayun, nagkandababagsak-bagsak ako. But looking back, isa yan sa medyo pinagsisihan ko. Because later on, when I needed to use documents written in Spanish about the Philippine Revolution, I had to get hold of a translator. So in a way, tama si Alex. Pero ang tingin ko naman, hindi pwede nating sabihin na completely mali ang FQS doon sa kanilang tendency na itakwil ang colonial vestiges. May mga attempts din naman to sift kung alin ang mapapakinabangan at hindi mapapakinabangan.
Ang sulin nung mga sila po, napakabayad Bonnie. Kaya ako nagsisisi bakit natin itinakyan. Kasi yung tulay natin sa nakaraan. It is the bridge to our Panbeng Kaliposan Manila Bridge over our troubled waters of history.
Siguro hindi lang dapat ginawang obligatory.
Hindi, actually ko masyadong sumobra yung Americanism natin. Anything spicy is bad. Tapos dagdag din dyan yung generation ng panahon na yun kasi generation guy between the old the new, no? Ang mga teachers naman very conservative, yun po, no, the pro-Franco. Bihira yung Spanish teacher na progresista eh. Yun lang.
Okay, so thank you very much. Any other questions?
Oh.
Okay, Ermi, yes, go ahead. Ermi, you have the floor. Yeah.
Walang sound.
Hermie.
Sino ba ang nagtatanong?
Ermi, ikaw. Nag-raise ka ng hand mo.
Okay, Bonnie, parang wala gusto ko mag-comment dun sa unang nagtanong. Yung pagligtas sa pamilyang Marcos sa Malacanang nung EDSA, kasi parang tinanggap lang yun ng marami, di ba? Na bakit tinanggap yun na parang may prerogative ang US government to save a dictator, no? From the clamor of justice ng Filipino people, no? Kasi 14 years of martial law, maraming mga atrocities yan Hindi lang atrocities, corruption, lahat na, no? Parang pumunta sa climax na sawan-sawa na ang tao sa mga pangyayari under martial law, spontaneously na ginawa na nila yung dapat gawin, ano? Justice ang issue doon Bakit ililigtas ng isang foreign government at ipo-frustrate yung demand for justice ng population against the oppression ng dictator, no? Tapos parang tinanggap lang yun na siniligtas siya ng Amerikano. Parang okay lang, parang gano'n. Kasi mapapansin natin, yun nga, may isang example, yung may mga dictators talaga na after nagkaroon ng uprising, pinadaan sa justice system, no? Kasi noon dapat tinrial ang Marcos family and the cronies na hindi nangyari dahil niligtas sila physically, no? Tapos ang isa pa, ang komentaryo ko din, nung nag-take over yung Cory government, parang ang hinabol nila yung kayamanan, di ba? Ang unang action ng Cory government yung magtayo ng PCGG, habulin yung stolen wealth. Parang, bakit pera ang habol? Ba't hindi justice, di ba? Ba't hindi justice? Pwede silang nag-demand na pabalikin sa Pilipinas ang Marcos family and cronies at i-trial. Di ba? Bakit pera? Tapos, ayun, ang dami-dami nilang mga effort sa paghabol ng stolen wealth, no? Pero, paghabol sa justice, maraming nabiktima yung martial law, maraming ninakaw na pera, maraming atrocities, parang baliwala lang. Pera muna, parang gano'n. Anyway, yun lang komentary ko. May tanong lang ako, sa ngayon, saan mo ma-attribute ang kasi very prevalent pa rin yung pro-American sentiment ng mga Pilipino na halimbawa yung pagpasok ng more EDCA sites, parang tinatanggap lang na kasi yan ang magde-defend sa Pilipinas kaya okay lang na pumasok yan, parang gano'n. Marami pang question na issues, laging sumusuporta ang Philippine government, kahit sinong presidente from 1946 to the present, sa mga US policies. Tapos parang tanggap tanggap lang ng population. Although, siyempre, may mga sektor din na nagpo-protesta. Saan mo ma-attribute yan? Parang, halimbawa, yung pagpasok ng China, no, sa affairs ng Philippines, parang tanggap lang na US ang magde-defend sa atin sa China parang gano'n. Di ba? Saan mo ma-attribute? Sa cultural sphere, no? Yan ang question ko.
Well, I think ang problema talaga hindi naunawaan ng mas nakararaming Pilipino, I would say that, about the roots of our dependency. Parang tinanggap na mahina tayo talaga Ganyan na yan talaga. So kung mahina tayo talaga, di kailangang umasa tayo sa ibang mas malakas na nagsasabing tayo ay ipagtatanggol. Not knowing na yung kahinaan nila ay nag-uugat dun sa nagsasabing ipagtatanggol ko kayo. So history yan I think that's the way it is.
Okay, any other question? Anyone else?
Agnes, before
Yes.
we leave the comment of Mr. Umali, I
Okay.
just wanted to put this in. Nung EDSA revolution going back, it's
Mhm.
ironic that it was Cardinal Sin who called the people to come to EDSA. But do you know that he was also the one who called the US Embassy to tell them to rescue Marcos? Yeah, that's a fact. So it's, because the pilots of the Air Force had already left their planes, no? They had already moved to the other side. So it was Cardinal Sin who called the US Embassy and asked the Americans to rescue Marcos.
Because the mob has already...
Because the mob was already at the gates of Malacanang. And
Correct.
so it's just,
Correct.
So, mali
yeah.
yung kay Hermie. Sabi mo, mali yung kay Hermie comment.
Well, I
Hindi.
think it was just in keeping with the
with the siguro yung
with the
Christian
church.
ano niya, no?
Yes, with the
Yeah.
church, with the Christian tradition.
The Christian tradition na we
Correct.
don't want
Blood.
bloodshed, we don't
Oh.
want to
Forgiveness.
Right.
forgiveness, yung
Yeah.
ganun-ganon,
Right.
ayaw nating
Right.
makakita ng kasi people were asking for blood at
Right.
the gates of Malacanang.
Right.
So siguro natakot din si si Cardinal Sin na baka may mangyaring
Oh.
karahasan.
Yes.
Sana
In
Romania, sana sila.
in
Sana
fact
na
nung
Ceausescu na yun at that time, Bobby.
in fact
Oo.
nung nakapasok ng mga tao sa Malacanang, inabutan ng mga tao ang mga sundalo. Alam mo ang mga sundalo nag-surrender tapos nakiusap sila. Ang sabi nila ganito, pwede po bang payagan ninyo kaming magpalit ng uniforme para makalabas kami at hindi kami masakta ng mga tao.
Masaktan ng mga tao. Oo.
Yes, kasi pag naka-uniforme sila, lumabas sila ng kalye, patay sila. And they began throwing their rifles sa Pasig River.
Mm.
Anyway.
These
Yeah,
are
anyway.
tidbits that are not very known to many people, right?
Yeah.
Okay, may katanungan pa ba?
Agnes, my question.
Yes,
May
Rick?
I have a question?
Yes, go ahead, Rick.
To our keynote speaker. It's well and good to know the history, our past, how cruel the martial law is. Now we have the son of the former dictator as our president. Moving forward, how can we resolve or help justify our people in the Philippines? You think that the history will repeat itself? Well, it has now, but will be another martial law is coming, and what can we do about it?
Well, the truth of the matter is, martial law never really left. Wala lang formal proclamation. But even after EDSA, the succeeding regimes were able to implement the best or worst, kung ano man ang mapagpilian, practices of martial law. So in effect, may martial law kahit walang formal declaration. Right now, Marcos Jr. need not proclaim another 1081 Kasi meron ng anti-terror law na sufficiently enough nag-grant sa executive to have martial law powers. So ganun ang sitwasyon natin ngayon.
And
Okay.
we have an opportunity now, di ba, Bonnie? We have a great opportunity now kasi klarong-klaro na talaga that the elections were rigged. I mean, the TNT trio has come up with very, very strong evidence already, pero wala parang walang action.
Even in this
forum, yeah, walang
bakit hindi kayo nagsusuporta?
Oo, wala pa ring action. I mean, this is really a good time for people to really question and to be adamant. Pero parang wala lang. People parang tinatanggap na lang, you know.
Kulang ng public awareness.
I agree.
Public
Oo.
education.
Hindi ba?
Well, really, if what I'm hearing is true, there's no resolve. Tinatanggap na lang, baliwala, may martial law pa rin. So, what are we doing here? We should do something about this to move forward.
Bumalik sa Pilipinas.
You don't have to balik sa Pilipinas. You can fight wherever you are.
Yeah.
I just want to make a time check. You know, it's already 9:50 in the evening on, I guess, 10:50 in the Philippines.
In the Philippines.
I'll take one more question from Maria Elena Ang. And
Malen.
kung may mga katanungan
Okay, si
kayo na
Malen.
hindi pakisulat.
Hello,
Malen.
sorry na late ako kasi meron akong kausap tungkol sa Palestinian Israel earlier. Gusto ko lang mag-react dun sa kanina yung comment ni Alex Umali. Ang ano ko lang kasi yung tungkol sa language. Yung depende din kasi doon sa colonialist master natin. Yung Spain did not want yung mga tao na matuto, na mag-aral. So, basically, yung language na Espanyol, na limit lang doon sa mga elite classes na makaka-afford ng education noon. So, karamihan nagpunta pa nga sa Europa. Samantalang ang American colonialist, gusto nilang mag-aral sa Ingles para ma-i-acculturate sa American culture ang mga Pilipino. So, yun yung isang dahilan na hindi natin in-exclude yung yung colonial natin, yung mga languages, para pag-aralan yung history. Sa totoo lang, marami akong napunta ako sa Spain, may natutunan ako doon, may golden diorama, red and gold na diorama na ini-explain, halimbawa yung isang nangyaring revolt sa Quezon na dinonate ng mga Laurel family, na kung saan pinapakita doon yun daw mga colonial Spanish ang nanalo at yung mga Indio na talo. Samantalang yung sa revolt na yun, panalo yung yung mga Pilipino. So ang ibig ko sabihin, magkaiba yung nila sa language. Kaya yung naman yung natututunan natin iba rin. At the same time, kung may writings man doon sa Espanyol tungkol sa Philippine Revolt, hindi yun dinenegate ng mga makabayang Pilipino. Pero siyempre hindi natin alam. Majority ng mga Pilipinos hindi marunong magsalita ng Espanyol. At saka bakit nila yayakapin yung lengguwahe ng colonial Spain na ang ano nila doon, traumatic ang experience nila natin. Sa pangyayari, 500 years na pangyayari ng mga Spanish. Bakit mo so natural yung parang ininegate nila, hindi nila niyakap o pinag-aralan. At the same time, iba naman din yung karanasan natin sa mga Amerikano. Almost 600,000 na Pilipinos ang napatay noong Filipino-American War noong 1899 hanggang 1901.
Okay.
Yun lang, reaction ko lang yun doon sa ng language na hindi dinideny ng FQS yan.
Maraming salamat, Elena. Thank you very much for your insight. Sa ngayon naman ay tapos ng ating Q&A, pero wag ko kayo mawawala at meron po tayong papalabas sa inyo na video na talagang magugustuhan ninyo. Ngayon naman ay panoorin natin ang huling pagtatanghal ng tula na Pag-ibig sa Tinubuang Lupa ni Eri Maestro, Enriquez Guerra, and Olivia Camacho, to be followed by the singing of Ambayan by the People's Chorale. So, take it away for the video.
Pag-ibig sa Tinubuang Lupa ni Andres Bonifacio. Aling pag-ibig pa ang hihigit kaya sa pagkadalisay at pagkadakila gaya ng pag-ibig sa Tinubuang Lupa? Aling pag-ibig pa? Wala na nga. Wala. Banal na pag-ibig pag ikaw ang nukal sa tapat na puso ng sino't alinman. Imbit taong gubat, maralita't mangmang, nagiging dakila at iginagalang.
Walang mahalagang hindi inihandog ng pusong mahal sa bayang nagkupkup. Duguyaman, dunong, katiis at pagod. Buhay may abuting, magkalagot-lagot.
Ay, ito ay ang inang bayang tinubuan. Siya ay ina at tangi na kinamulatan ng kawili-wiling liwanag ng araw na nagbibigay init sa lunong katawan. Kalakip din ito ay ang pag-ibig sa bayan. Ang lahat ng lalong sa gunita ay mahal mula sa masaya't gasong kasunggulan hanggang sa katawan ay mapasa libingan.
Ang nangakaraang panahon ng aliw, ang inaasahang araw na darating, ng pagkatimawa ng mga alipin, liban pa sa bayan tatanghalin. Sa aba ng abang mawalay sa bayan, gunita may laging sakbibi ng lumbay, walang alaala at inaasam-asam, kundi ang makita'y lupang tinubuan.
Ang bayan kong Pilipinas, lupain ng ginto't bulaklak, pag-ibig ang sa kaniyang palad, nag-alay ng ganda dilag.
At sa kanyang yumi at ganda, dayuhan ay nakalina. Bayan ko, binihag ka, nasadlak sa dusa. Ibon mang may layang lumipad, kulungin mo at pumitiglas. Bayan pa kayang sakdal dilag, ang limang nasang makaalpas. Pilipinas kong minumutya, pugad ng luha ko't dalita, aking adhika, makita kang sakdalaya. Kay sarap mabuhay sa sariling bayan, kung walang alipin at may kakayaan, ang bayan sinisig, baba mo lalabanin, ang silang ay pupula sa inyas ng panglaya. Ibon mang may layang lumipad, kulungin mo at pumipiglas, bayan pa kayang sakdal dilaw, ang limang nasang makaalpas. Pilipinas kong minumutya, bukad ng luha ko't dalita, aking adhika, makita kang sakdalaya. Aking adhika, makita kang sakdalaya. Ibon mang may layang lumipad, kulungin mo at pumipiglas, bayan pa kayang sakdal dilaw, ang limang nasang makaalpas. Pilipinas kong minumutya, bukad ng luha ko't dalita, aking adhika, makita kang sakdalaya. Aking adhika, makita kang sakdalaya.
Beautiful. Ngayon po ay patapos na ating programa. Nagpapaabot ng pasasalamat ang Philippine-Canadian Writers and Journalists Network sa naging panauhin ngayong gabi kay Ginoong Bonifacio Ilagan at sa kanyang saliksik sa kultura at sining. Gayon din naman sa mga kasamang tumulong sa promosyon, suporta at dumalo sa ating Bonifest 2023. Malaya Canada, International Coalition for Human Rights in the Philippines in Toronto, Migrante Canada, Philippine Advancement through Arts and Culture, UP Alumni Association of Toronto, Bicol Canada Community Association, Kabayan for Lenny, Radyo Migrante, Bayan Canada, Anak Bayan, Global Truth and Transparency Advocacy Network, at sa lahat ng mga nagtanghal na mga artista at makata. At higit sa lahat, salamat sa ating magagaling na tech support, si Mikael Jagan and Leandra Gamboa. Sila po ang aming mga lifesavers kasi kagabi nang nag-rehearsal kami, hindi namin mapatakbo yung mga video. And they were there right at the right moment. Maraming salamat, of course, sa mga dumalo ngayong gabi. It's almost 2 hours that we had this, and thank you so much for staying on. Sa inyong lahat, nagpupugay kami para sa patuloy na paggunita sa kabayanihan ni Supremo Andres Bonifacio. Sa susunod muling Bonifest, magandang gabi po muli at mabuhay ang sambayanang Pilipino. Thank you very much.
Buhay po kayo. Salamat ka, Bonnie. Salamat.